If you found this video, consider this your sign to go ahead and make a trade in your Dynasty League today, because earlier this week, we talked about 6 players to buy post-NFL free agency, and now today, we're flipping the script and talking about 6 players to sell post-NFL free agency, players you should be looking to get in return, picks you should be looking to acquire, all that and so much more. And Cameron, frankly, you're starting us off blazing hot here with Saquon Barkley as your first sell. Go ahead, get the people riled up here. Why are you looking to ship off Saquon Barkley?
I need to start. I'm not saying the wheels are falling off. All right, that's how I'm gonna start you off. But we need to look at the facts. Some historical data here. Saquon Barkley just came off a season with the 5th most attempts in a year since 2010. He didn't even play 2017 or in week 17. Obviously, he had the playoffs as well. So there's a lot of miles on those tires after this last season. Since 2010, only 5 running backs have had back-to-back 300 attempt seasons. Michael Turner did it. He was 28 years old when he had his first season. So that's a good sign. Then it was Marshawn Lynch, who was 26, LaShawn McCoy, 25, Ezekiel Elliott, 23, and Derrick Henry, who was also 25. However, no running back has had 340 plus attempts and then 300 attempts the next season, right? So Saquon comes out, looked great last year. He needs to be truly the anomaly if he wants to repeat, even get close to repeating what he did last year. The average year after having 340 attempts, 223 carries for 892 yards. So that I'm just throwing some history at you there. The other side of it, do you remember last year, Christian McCaffrey? He was also the running back 4 in Dynasty formats. He was also 28 years old. He was valued the same as Malik Neighbors and A.J. Brown. His current value, if it would have held today, is would be the same as Ashton Genty, Saquon Barkley's, Nico Collins, and Drake London's. Although Christian McCaffrey goes out and gets hurt. So for me, I'm not saying he's going to be Christian McCaffrey. I'm not saying he's going to get hurt. But you're playing a risky game here with Saquon, because if he gets hurt at all, the value tanks completely. Right now, Christian McCaffrey is valued as the running back 18. You can't get even nearly the same return this year as you could last year for Christian McCaffrey, and some managers won't even touch him. The best season that we saw from a guy coming off 330 plus carries was Michael Turner, who did have 301 carries the next season for 1,300 yards. But Michael Turner finished with 14.1 fantasy points per game and was the 19th in points per game. So my concern is that we do see regression. We see the age regression from Saquon Barkley. If touchdowns come down at all, his other issue was he didn't have the same receiving numbers we saw in New York, which can pad it a little bit. So you have to expect some sort of regression. And at 28 years old, as the running back 4 in Dynasty, I need 2 more years of a top 3 running back for me to feel like that's worth it. Otherwise, I got to ship off Saquon. So I still think Saquon's great. I just don't think we're going to see the same type of season again, and for sure not over the next 2 seasons.
Saquon Barkley is a phenomenal football player. He's one of the best running backs in the NFL. I'm going to make sure we continue to say that, because what we are not saying is that Saquon Barkley stinks and he's going to fall off a cliff. This is all game theory and managing value and what assets you can acquire in return, right? I'm going to initially reserve my thoughts on Saquon Barkley as someone who shipped off Saquon Barkley before his final year with the New York Giants in our Dynasty League. I actually shipped him to Ty, and Ty, you actually shipped off Saquon Barkley more recently as well. So I'm going to let you kick off our thoughts here on Saquon Barkley. Is he a sell candidate here?
I'm torn on this one, because I'm never going to say no. I'm never going to ignore the potential regression risk with any kind of fantasy football asset, right? Saquon obviously is going to have kind of the wider scope, you could say, on him, just because, again, he's coming off of a career year where you run for over 2,000 yards. That being said, though, I feel like I can make the anomaly for Saquon Barkley because he is such an elite talent in an elite situation in Philadelphia with the offensive line and the system that they have there in place. So I think in most cases, I shouldn't say most cases, in all cases, when it comes to regression, I see it. There's always a path for regression. But like I said, I think I can make a case to kind of give the pass to Saquon Barkley because of the talent that he is. That at that point, I would rather just hold rather than sell. But again, it's everyone's preference at that point.
So I do think this is an important thing we need to name with Saquon Barkley, because that's, I think, where I land as well. If you are a top 4 team in your dynasty league, and I mean you are in the championship or third place game repeatedly in your league, and you have Saquon Barkley on your team, you ride this ship until the wheels come off. I don't think there's a price that you could pay me for Saquon Barkley right now.
Are you sure about that?
I am sure about that.
I disagree.
I am very sure about that.
I disagree.
I don't think it's worth. So okay. So are you telling me that potentially shipping off Saquon Barkley is worth missing out on a fantasy championship? Because what do we play this game for? We play this game for championships. And Saquon Barkley is debatably, I mean, we're looking in redraft leagues for next year. Saquon Barkley is the 1st or 2nd overall pick with Jamar Chase. I mean, these are the guys who are going to deliver you a championship. So I get we're trying to play a long game here, but if you're a top 4 team in your league and you're a contender each year, I don't know how you could reasonably ship off Saquon Barkley right now.
Saquon Barkley would be the first running back since 2010, the only running back since 2010.
You history nerd, I don't care.
To finish top 10 in points per game after having 340 carries the year before. He would have to do that. And if you truly believe that's going to happen, that's fine. But I think you can get multiple other guys who can finish top 10, multiple other guys who can even finish top 5 at the position for the same as Saquon Barkley. If I had to bet on him finishing inside or outside top 5, I'm betting on him finishing outside the top 5 this next season, because that's what history says. That's what happens when you're 28 years old. That's what happens when you come off 340 carries. That's what happens when you're banking on that. Even look at Derrick Henry, who did it in 2022. He had 349 carries. The next season, he still had 280 carries, but he was the running back 14 in points per game. Obviously plays for the Tennessee Titans. I understand that. But even if you give Saquon a bump of 7, or 4 points per game more, he still wouldn't be a top 5 running back this season. That's my worry. That's my concern. And looking at it from the Christian McCaffrey point of view, I had Christian McCaffrey last year. I was in this position. I said, there's no way I can get rid of Christian McCaffrey. If he gets hurt at all,
vendetta for you. This is all this is.
A little bit, though, because I'm learning from it. If he gets hurt at all, the value tanks. I'm not saying he's going to get hurt, but the value is significantly less next year if he doesn't return on top 3 value. That he has to be top 3 this year for it to be worth holding on to.
Again, if you are not a top 3 or 4 team in your league, I think moving off of Saquon Barkley is a fine idea, because at that point, you can't play the middle in Dynasty. You are either pushing all the chips in to win, or you are looking at potentially rebuilding. And if you're in the middle ground here, I would rather move the opposite direction with Saquon Barkley rather than trying to accumulate pieces to win around Saquon Barkley for a year. I'd rather go ahead and see what I can accumulate for Saquon Barkley. Even if you're a contending team, though, let's look at it from your perspective here, Cameron, and then we can potentially move it on. I'm okay if you want to go out and get Nico Collins for Saquon Barkley. Mm-hmm. If you can do that, I would go out and do that. If you could get Ladd McConkey and a little bit of a sprinkle, I'm okay if you want to go out and do that. If you have a need at wide receiver, I think a lot of these upper echelon wide receivers, I am more than happy to try and make a trade for with Saquon Barkley. I'm trying to look at where Puka Nacua is, because he's another name that I would be interested in. How high is he climbing up? Oh, he's at 15 now. Yeah. He's at 15 and Barkley's at 24. I guess that's a little bit higher than I was expecting. But yeah, if you were to go out and do a Saquon Barkley, Puka Nacua, or a Saquon Barkley, Nico Collins swap, I'm very okay with that. If you want to entertain that, are you still just hold at all costs, Ty?
Yeah, I would say so. Just because I don't think you're going to get what's fair in return for Saquon, because I think people are going to either say, well, he's 28 years old and he isn't getting any younger, or you're going to get the crowd that says, the regression crowd. There's a million excuses that you can come up with for someone not being being as in on Saquon Barkley as they should be. So I as long as you can get something that is, worthwhile in return. Again, like the Nico Collins thing, love that. I literally talked about Nico Collins as a buy in the last episode. Right. But like, if people are going to be trying to lowball you, right, and trying to give you like a draft pick and name like Bucky Irving or something like that, I'm going to have a tough time accepting that.
Interesting. That might be one situation. If you're willing to give me Bucky Irving and like a hefty draft pick, I might be willing to consider it.
Well, we've had our conversations about that backfield, so I definitely feel one way compared to you.
Touche. We'll keep it moving here though. But before we do, Cameron told you in our last episode, our goal is to hit 3,000 subscribers here on the YouTube channel before the NFL draft, and we're gonna do a little giveaway at 3K subscribers. And Cameron went ahead and offered out my money as an incentive.
Mr. Billionaire.
Yeah, if you actually knew what I did for a living, everybody would completely understand how deep in the dough I am. But no, I'll take you up on that. $100 of my personal money to one lucky subscriber when we hit 3,000 subscribers. So go ahead, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell as well, so you're alerted when all of our newest videos are up. I promise you'll love hanging around with us here. As you can tell, fun, friendly banter around fantasy football. That's what we love doing. That's what we love talking about. Dynasty, redraft, best ball, you name it. We have it covered here. So hit that subscribe button, turn the notification bell, and leave a like as well if you're enjoying the content thus far. Ty, I'll transition to you here now. Your first sell candidate, wide receiver Brandon Aiyuk for the San Francisco 49ers. And I think this is somewhat of a consensus one, but why is this still bring it up?
Yeah, just because there are so many different paths that Brandon Aiyuk can go on really after this year that I think it's just worthwhile to get out now rather than trying to run the risk of maybe he lands in a different situation and he's a target hog or whatever it is, right? Like Brandon Aiyuk obviously missed the second half of the season with a torn ACL and MCL. So that's automatically a more severe injury than just a partial tear of one ligament in the knee, like we've seen with other players in the past. And he's been in the middle of trade talks yet again for most of the offseason so far. At this point, he's unlikely to get moved, but it's notable that he was in trade talks before signing the extension in San Francisco. He was in them again this offseason. I just think we can't forget how poor the first half of the season was before he got hurt. I mean, only one game with 50 or more receiving yards, and he was a wide receiver 54 in points per game. Now, that comes from the holdout and the contract negotiations because the dude obviously held out, and it was no secret. It was all over the media. But I just think we're already going up against so much to bounce back from last year with the injury and all that stuff that I mentioned. But the other thing is that like, he's not a target hog in this offense because that's just not how this system operates, right? You've got a George Kittle, you've got a run game with Christian McCaffrey. You did trade away Deebo Samuel, but you did spend a first round draft pick on Ricky Pearsall. You found something with Juwan Jennings. I don't know what it is, but you found something with him, right? His best year in this Niners offense was insanely efficient on not so great volume. It was at nearly 18 yards of reception on wide receiver 36 usage on a per game basis. So again, back to the trade talk, San Francisco really should consider moving on from him after this year because the cap number jumps from $16 million next year to $42 million in 2027. So like I said earlier, the deck is stacked against Brandon Aiyuk for me to really believe that he's going to be a staple in your fantasy lineups. And you can see him keep trade cut. He's a wide receiver 32. And you may look at that and go, wow, that seems pretty cheap. I thought the same thing, but then I actually thought about the situation where Brandon Aiyuk currently stands. And I said, you know what? I really don't care if this seems cheap. I would want to get out now just because I don't want to play this game of what if with Brandon Aiyuk.
Yeah, the fascinating name on this list is Travis Hunter. And I think I would take Travis Hunter straight up over Brandon Aiyuk. I'm willing to
1000%.
This is the epitome of the Family Guy meme that I saw Ian Hartitz throw it out the other day. Not specifically with Travis Hunter and Brandon Aiyuk, but it's a Family Guy meme where Peter Griffin, he's like, it's a speedboat. You know what a speedboat is, but there could be anything in a mystery box. It could even be a boat, right? Like that's what I feel like. I would rather take the mystery box with Travis Hunter over Brandon Aiyuk. And even like Chuba Hubbard, who we have in the same range. We've all raved about Chuba Hubbard this offseason and how much of a value he is. Make that trade in a heartbeat. I 100% agree. I think you can get subliminally better value for Brandon Aiyuk right now versus as the season goes on and potentially even after this season. This is the time to get out and just get what you can get for Brandon Aiyuk. Would you agree, Cameron?
Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting because you think about maybe trading him, what that looks like. And like you said, it's kind of like trading a mystery box for a mystery box almost of you really don't know. Like if Brandon Aiyuk comes back, he could be a top 20 wide receiver. But at the same time, he could, absolutely destroy you. Same with trading for, like a early second round pick for Brandon Aiyuk. The issue with Aiyuk, though, is probably by the time he's healthy, he's 28 years old, coming off a torn ACL, MCL, and an offense that doesn't throw the ball a ton. Right? That's what about Brandon Aiyuk, where you have a little more excitement going other ways. I really don't hate it. I think if you're on a team where you're just like, I have no assets, I have, I just don't know what to do. Brandon Aiyuk might not be the worst one to keep, just because, right, there is at least potential because we've seen it happen before. If you're on a team though where you're like, there's no reason for me to risk this. I have enough. I'm gonna just go either get something, a little, say maybe a Chris Godwin, right? Yeah. Same range, coming off an injury, but Chris Godwin definitely feels a lot safer than Brandon Aiyuk does right now. Maybe, trading for that pick to get a running back or something like that. I really don't hate moving off Aiyuk. I don't think for me he's like, I need to sell, but I'm never gonna, like, if he's on my team, I'm probably looking to trade just to see what's out there fielding offers for him.
Yeah, and we won't beat a dead horse on this one because I don't think there's much we can add on top of this other than maybe he's not the biggest sell candidate out there, but if he's just kind of floating out there and you need to shake up the roster a bit, you could definitely go out and get some more useful pieces like a Chuba Hubbard, like we mentioned. If you need a quarterback, you could do a lot worse than Sam Darnold, Justin Fields, who is also in this range as well. I don't hate making a trade for any of those guys if you need some quarterback help in the Superflex League as well. I'm going to move back up the board, though. I'm going to move back up closer to Saquon Barkley than Brandon Aiyuk because I think Kyren Williams is the epitome of a player I love to try and trade away at this point in the offseason because Kyren Williams is heading into the final year of his rookie deal. And these like A-tier rookie running backs are always the guys that I'm looking, or not rookie running backs, A-tier running backs in the final stretches of the rookie deals. I'm always looking to sell at this point because unless if your name is Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs, or Christian McCaffrey, who were all top 45 picks in the NFL draft right away, it's usually a bad bet to hold on to these running backs into their second contracts. Kyren Williams is the 5th round pick, in case you care. 146th overall, I believe he was. But let's say Kyren Williams does walk at the end of the season too. Like, where is he actually going to find a better situation than the lead back, the featured back for a Sean McVay offense? Maybe Kansas City? And that's probably a maybe even. And let's also not act like it was all sunshine and roses for Kyren in 2024 either. I mean, his yards per carry dipped from 5 in 2023 to 4.1 last year. And of all running backs with at least 50 totes in 2024, Kyren's explosive run rate of 1.9% was 57th of 70 qualifying running backs. And his 0.13 forced missed tackles per attempt was 47th. So Kyren was significantly less elusive in 2024. Go ahead, turn on the film. That's not an untrue statement. The film doesn't lie. Kyren could not find a hole to save his life last year. So we can hide behind this like volume is king thing for Kyren, right? We just kind of slap it on him to rationalize away any concerns. But I honestly think you're playing a super dangerous game just assuming Kyren's going to be the lead the league again in snap share for the 3rd straight season this upcoming year, especially knowing Sean McVay isn't afraid to switch things up, and with Blake Corum still just kind of eerily sitting in the background as well. So Kyren Williams, he's like the epitome of great. He had an awesome season. He got the volume, the touchdowns are there, got all the inside the 5 touches. Yeah, I'm not betting on that for a 3rd straight season.
Yeah, it really is. It's interesting with Kyren because, right, he could be a Joe Mixon-esque player of, the volume or the efficiency sucks year after year after year, but they keep sticking with him. And he's good for fantasy because of it, because he scores, he gets enough receiving work. But the issue, like you can see on the screen, is Kyren's 194 pounds.
Yeah.
Maintaining that kind of volume year after year wears on guys who are 230 pounds. It wears on Derrick Henry, who's like 295 pounds, right? It's going to weigh on Kyren Williams, who's literally half his size. So it just makes you kind of, hesitate a little bit. I don't hate it. I think he's at the kind of that tipping point where I don't know how much higher his value can go in Dynasty, right? Because if he has another season, are we really pushing him that much higher?
No.
We're really going no, because then he's just 1 year further along. He's, maybe if he gets paid next year, right, then it's a different conversation. But even then, it's maybe he's running back 8, maybe he's running back 9, right? It's like maybe we're barely moving up. So I don't think you're going to lose out on too much value if he has a great season. And everything's kind of saying regression in coming for volume this year. Efficiency was down. Sean McVay doesn't roll with the same guy unless his name is Todd Gurley once things get bad, right? There's just so many things going on that I think it's safer to move Kyren. I'm going through the same thing right now. I was, 0.4 points away from winning our championship in one of our dynasty leagues with Kyren. And I'm like, I guess I got to move him. I'm just trying to figure out how I want my running backs to look. And I'm definitely fielding offers at this point for him.
You brought up Joe Mixon too. Joe Mixon, the 48th selection in the 2017 NFL draft, another top 50 selection, who may be, again, people want to just totally throw Joe Mixon off to the side after how badly he torched fantasy managers in the back half of the season, for how poorly he performed. I mean, we're talking a top 3 running back through the first half of the season. Yeah. So but again, I don't think that's Kyren. I don't think Kyren finds a better home as the lead feature back with over 300 rush attempts last year, leading the league in snap share at 85+% the last 2 seasons. I mean, I just don't think that's a safe assumption to make, Ty. I want to think you agree with me on this one.
No, I totally do. And my thing is, historical data hates where Kyren Williams is at. I know you gave Cam some crap with Saquon about historical data, but this one I found
not when it supports my argument, though.
Thank you. So I was curious, just again, Cam, you brought up the weight at 194 and the fact that Kyren finished with over 300 carries this year. I was like, how many times has that happened in NFL history? And it's only happened one other time, and that was with Chris Johnson. Mm-hmm. And I was like, is he really 194? And sure enough, I went to Fantasy Pros and they have him at 202. And then I Googled it and he was at 208. And I was like, fine, I'm just going to go with 208. Looking at all running backs that are 208 pounds or less that had a year with 300 or more carries, there have only been 6 guys. Tiki Barber, Clinton Portis, Chris Johnson, Maurice Jones-Drew, Reuben Drones for the Cleveland Browns all the way back in 2005. Man. This is where we are naming some dudes, okay? And now Kyren Williams. Only 2 of those guys were able to take on more work the following year, and that was Clinton Portis and Tiki Barber way back in the early 2000s, okay? Those guys eventually hit regression as well, and on average, those 6 running backs saw a decrease of 85 carries the following season. So we're not only going, if you put that to Kyren, we're back down to where we were back in 2023. Those running backs, again, would score an average of 99 fantasy points less than the previous year as well. So Kyren put up 272 total fantasy points last year in PPR formats. You take away 99 points, that would have put him at the running back 29. Okay. I'm not saying it's an exact science. I'm not saying that's exactly how it's going to play out for Kyren. But the point is that regression is coming in hot, and you take into account Blake Corum in the backfield with a coach like McVay that could look to switch things up, like you were saying, Lucas. The time really is now to get out on Kyren. And we're not saying that Kyren's going to be a bad player. We're just saying for the longevity of your fantasy team, it is wise to at least start shopping around Kyren Williams just to see what you can get in return.
I mean, Sean McVay's already been talking about making changes to the running back room this offseason. believe it was over on Fantasy Points data. I'll put a clip of the article on the screen here, where Sean McVay, like, in talks with Liam Cohen.
Duval.
It's necessary now. He was talking about how he really admired the ways in which he schemed up Bucky Irving, but also the capability to still get multiple backs involved in the system. Now, I know that turned out fine for Bucky Irving and whatever. We can have our debates around that. I just don't think it's a safe game to be playing and saying Kyren Williams is going to be this workload monster. This offense is going to be just Kyren Williams is going to take a leap back forward in efficiency while not ceding work to Blake Corum. There's just too many elements coming in here that, look, in Dynasty, if I got one more year of Kyren, it might be one good year. I'd rather get out a year early than a year late with a guy like Kyren Williams, though. That's what it comes down to for me.
Mm-hmm.
We'll put a bow on. Go ahead. Were you going to add something, Cameron?
I just said I would agree.
Yeah, we'll put a bow on it there. We'll take a quick break. We'll be back with 3 more sells afterwards. Today's podcast episode is brought to you by our friends over at Underdog Fantasy. Now, we love Underdog. It is the easiest place to play best ball formats, and they even have their own form of player props called Pick'em. You can make up to 20 times your money on a single night by correlating props together. 2 picks will triple your money, 3 will 6 times it, 4 will 10 times it, and 5 plays that all hit will multiply your entry by 20. You can even place insurance on your picks too, so if only 4 of your 5 props hit, you still get 10 times your entry. And if you use our code FELLAS when signing up, Underdog is going to double your first deposit up to $100. Alrighty, we are back. We've covered 3 different players to sell in Dynasty formats thus far. Started off really hot. Saquon Barkley, Brandon Aiyuk, and then wrapped up with Kyren Williams on the front half. On the back half, Cameron, we're going to dig down the board a little bit deeper. We're going to start with Brian Robinson here. Why is Brian Robinson a sell for you?
There's no upside with Brian Robinson. 0.
I was going to say, as if that's really a question. I don't think this is
Yeah.
too hot of a take compared to
No.
Saquon, but
100%. Like there's just no upside. And I think we might look back on the 2024 draft and say that it killed a lot of these middling running backs.
yes.
Because I think we have enough guys who are coming in now who are going to be on cheaper contracts, who are going to be younger. Brian Robinson's heading 26, heading into a contract year. This season, he has a receiving back in Austin Eckler in that backfield and an elite rushing quarterback in Jaden Daniels. He has never finished better than the running back 21 in points per game so far. He has never averaged over 4.3 yards per carry. He has 65 receptions in 41 games, and he has yet to break 800 receiving yard or 800 rushing yards in a single season. There just isn't an upside. There's just not a world where all of a sudden Brian Robinson this year is going to break up for 1,200 rushing yards and double-digit rushing touchdowns. It's not going to happen. He's not going to get the receiving work to get him there elsewhere. And then he goes into free agency where all teams who are maybe thinking about running back next year or have needs there this year are going to take one of the top 15 running backs who are all probably going to be good enough where teams aren't going to be like, why would we pay you more money to come on to, than we're paying this rookie right now? And yet we're still valuing him around a mid-second in super flex leagues. If I could flip a mid-second for Brian Robinson, I'm doing it right now. I'm not considering it. I don't care what type of team I'm on, because the upside for Brian Robinson is maybe you get 13 fantasy points a game average, right? And that's with the fluctuations of maybe you'll get 16 this game, but you could get 6 because he could just have 60 rushing yards, right? So I just don't get it. And, when he's ranked to 26 with no guarantee of a starting job next year, and he's upside is the running back 21, there's nothing for me that gives me any hope. And so I'm just like, I just don't want him on my team.
The Cam Scatterboo hive has got to be going absolutely insane that he's in the same tier as Brian Robinson in Dynasty formats. They're all thinking, yeah, of course, I will trade Brian Robinson in an instant to go get Cam Scatterboo, which honestly, like that is kind of what we're saying here, right? Is like, give me a second round pick. Ty, I'll say I was already ahead of this curve because you and I made a deal last offseason where I traded you Brian Robinson for a 2026 second round pick. I believe but then you actually shipped off Brian Robinson Jr. then in a different deal. But I digress. With it, like I can actively say I've made this deal And you've then since traded away Brian Robinson Jr. as well.
Yeah, well, that was because there were some other circumstances that
that's
led
true,
Brian
yeah.
Robinson to be the lead back, and I was like, I'm going to take the opportunity to get off of him now because I don't really want to take that on. I'm going to be honest. I get like Alexander Madison, like first year on the Raiders vibes of Brian Robinson, if that makes sense. Like people think that there's some
Hold
sneaky
up. Whoa,
upside here.
whoa. Hold up. You got a first for Brian Robinson?
Well, it's because I packaged with Mahomes.
Oh my gosh.
That was the Brian Robinson and Mahomes for Kyler in the first.
Oh my gosh. That first might be the 101 next year.
Yeah, right.
Wow.
And
Okay,
that first, turned into is going to turn into a top 3 pick at bare minimum.
Wow. All right. Sorry. That's insanity. Good work.
Thank you. We work the phones over here. Just saying. But again, I get like the Alexander Madison going, first year on Vegas vibes where everyone's like, who else is there? Like, this is his backfield. He's going to be on the goal line. He's got sneaky receiving upside. No, none of that is true here. Okay. And I'll be honest too. Deebo Samuel is a big piece here. I know he's not going to get used like he was in San Francisco with Shanahan, but like with the jackknife or like the Swiss Army knife of offensive weapons that is Deebo Samuel, what's to say that he's not going to steal a couple goal line carries? What's to say that he's not going to, I don't want to say he's going to be the RB1 for this team, but like you get my point is that like Deebo Samuel is another component to Brian Robinson's stock that, like you said, Cam, just like if you can get that mid-second round pick for this year, go for it. Go for it. Absolutely. Like find one of these younger receivers in this draft. If you really want to drink the Cam Scatterbo Kool-Aid, be my guest, but there is really no reason to be to hold on to Brian Robinson.
If you even need tight end help, David Njoku is only 2 players below Brian Robinson. Look. Do I need to just make David Njoku flag plant like all the way in March? Like I might have to, honestly, because this baffles me that a 28-year-old David Njoku can be valued the same as Brian Robinson, who might be relegated to a middling backup next year. And we might get 3-4 more years of quality starting tight end play from David Njoku, which we all know that's invaluable in the dynasty landscape. So I'm just saying there are you got plenty of outs here based on what the community is saying for Brian Robinson Jr., whether it is draft capital, whether it is if you even want to spend a mid-second round pick on a wide receiver, if like God forbid, a Jaden Higgins is still floating around in the mid-second round of your rookie drafts. Yeah. I mean, like you have so many outs here for Brian Robinson, and almost any of them could potentially give you an ounce of more upside than Brian Robinson could give you. So I'm with you, Cameron. There's just like, you have so many better outs here that would probably better suit your dynasty team than a Brian Robinson Jr. would at this moment in time. So you're going to talk about another running back who only has 1 year on their deal, but it's a fresh deal. Najee Harris signed with the Chargers this offseason, and you're seeing this as your opportunity to ship it.
Yeah. The newest member of the backfield, and, there is a lot to like about where Najee landed this offseason, right? Like, it's an upgrade in offense as a whole, from the QB to the offensive line, the whole gambit. It's an upgrade for him. His only competition, Gus Edwards or Kamani Vidal, if people are going to still hold on to that fever dream, or Hassan Haskins, or I don't know, name any other running back that's currently on their team. That's his competition right now. And then you have almost 200 vacated carries from J.K. Dobbins. My thing is, I don't think this role is secured in the slightest. I don't think that just because this team went out and signed Najee Harris, that they're not going to at least consider a running back in the draft. And I thought about joking around. I thought about saying a joke early about, like, we're only 29 days away from the Chargers taking a Cam Scatterbo or a Devin Neal. Like,
wouldn't that be fun? Oh man, Cam Scatterbo and Jim Harbaugh.
It feels like it's a match made in heaven. But like, even if they wait until like day 3 and get like a Taj Brooks or an Ollie Gordon or somebody like that, like I thought about saying that like half joking, but I'm also like half serious. Again, like I'm not convinced that Najee Harris just automatically is going to be the bell cow back in this Chargers offense just because he's a bigger back than J.K. Dobbins. Because look, there are still running backs available. J.K. Dobbins himself is still available. What if the team just goes out and re-signs him to another 1-year deal, right? This run offense was bottom 5 graded by PFF last year. And if we know Jim Harbaugh, we know that he will want to improve that because that's his bread and butter on offense. So to me, Najee Harris is a perfect sell because you can sell your league mates on the mystique of the team change, the optimism of moving from Pittsburgh to the Chargers, because all you have to do is ask yourself, what is the ceiling for Najee Harris? And if it's no higher than the running back 18, and I would even push to say running back 16, where J.K. Dobbins finished last year in points per game, running back 18, by the way, I just think it's time to package him up, move on, maybe try to upgrade if you can, or just try to get what you can.
And what happens when he's J.K. Dobbins next year? I know J.K. Dobbins is, and like what I mean by next year is that he's a second, third wave free agent next year. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibilities if he doesn't perform with the Chargers this year. Now I know J.K. is, a third wave free agent now for a multitude of reasons, right? I mean, the long extended injury history, obviously, and he's probably asking for a little bit more money than teams are probably willing to fork out, when you pair it with that injury history. But like, I don't think it's like an otherworldly thing. And a year from now, it's like, all right, Najee Harris, you're a Cleveland Brown. How excited are you now? Definitely not as excited as the running back 25 in Dynasty formats as he was the year prior. So I worry, the room to go down is a lot larger than there is room to go up, Cameron.
Yeah, I mean, at the beginning of next season, he's gonna be 28 and a half years old. Right. I mean, that's just the reality of he was an older rookie when he came into the NFL. Yep. He's 27 right now. His yards per carry last year was 4.0. Year before was 4.1. Year before that was 3.8. Year before that was 3.9. We're not talking about an efficient back. We're not talking about somebody that people are going to go, holy cow, he had a career high in yards per carry this year at 4.3 and he's 28 years old. Let's scoop him up. People just aren't going to be excited about him next year. I think this is probably the height of his dynasty value. Like Ty said, you're not going to get a top 12 back out of Najee Harris. You just aren't. You're going to get in that running back 15 to 19 range. And it's like similar to Brian Robinson. And like you were saying, Lucas, how much longer does that keep up? You're hoping maybe you get 2 years of that? I don't really need 2 years of a guy who's averaging 13 fantasy points a game. If I can move off of and get someone younger of his draft pick, if I can package him to get somebody else, right? I just don't want to play that game.
Yeah, Najee feels like a great package guy because you look at the names on the list, unless if I'm a contending team that needs wide receiver help, like the only name I'm really interested on the screen, kind of in this range of 10 players around Najee, is like Devontae Adams on the Rams. That's like the only name I'm really super. You can maybe talk me into Courtland Sutton, but then like that's like a 1-for-1 swap. Like I think I would rather try and package Najee to go up and get a guy, a few players up ahead of this range. But even so, like I don't think anybody is sitting here and hoping to get a top 12 season on a Najee. I think people could probably name 15 running backs they would prefer ahead of Najee Harris this year.
42.
But I ultimately think when we look at the scope of Najee, I think you're looking at like one successful year and in a dynasty format. Again, unless if you're a contending team, like Najee doesn't serve you much purpose after 1 year. No. Like what happens when he does become, like you said, Cameron, Brian Robinson, who just keeps kind of bouncing around, inefficient. I just don't see the total upside. Let me rephrase. I think there's upside this year for Najee, but what happens after this year? There's too much uncertainty there. I'd rather go ahead and just sell on the upside that people could potentially see here signing with the Chargers. Yeah. I'll bring us home here. I'll quit babbling. DK Metcalf is my final sell candidate for this episode. As of this recording, I took a look at our lad's depth charts, one of the most reliable sources for depth chart information.
Yes. Thank you.
Mason Rudolph and Skylar Thompson are the only two roster quarterbacks by the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Boop, boop, boop.
You all want to add anything else? I'm done. For real.
No.
I know nobody's looking to buy DK Metcalf because of that, right? Like nobody is out here thinking, you know what? I'm really going to invest in DK Metcalf because that Mason Rudolph can sling the rock around the yard. Everybody's expecting Mason Rudolph breakout season. But look, when that Aaron Rodgers signing hits, it is going to absolutely smack and everybody's going to be back in. But that's when you pounce. Because I'm not actually convinced that Aaron Rodgers is a net positive here for DK Metcalf. Rodgers was borderline bottom third in the league in deep ball attempts last season. And it's nothing new that DK Metcalf thrives on the deep ball, right? So you're potentially looking at less explosive and splash plays for DK to rack up fantasy points on. And Aaron Rodgers also isn't necessarily, like from a dynasty perspective, a long-term solution to pair with a 5-year contract DK Metcalf just got. So instead, then let's say the Steelers look to address that this year and they take a Jackson Dart or Tyler Shuck in the NFL draft. Are we really going to bet on a rookie quarterback being reliable and sustainable for DK Metcalf, not only this year, but in the years afterwards as well, in a very weak quarterback class this year? I know DK's only the wide receiver 24 on Keep Trade Cut, but like the names around him here, again, Dak Prescott, Josh Jacobs, Jalen Waddle, go down a little bit further than the guys who are on this list. Quinshon Judkins, like any mid first round pick you can get your hands on over the next 2 years. I'm good with it. I'm good just capitalizing on DK right now, the longevity of the contract he just got, and saying I'm not convinced Pittsburgh's actually a much better situation than Seattle is. Actually, I know it's not as good of a situation as Seattle is, especially if they decide to keep George Pickens around.
Yeah, I like DK is my issue. Like I think
I do too. I was the biggest DK stan this last season. I'm just here to tell you that I think we're waiting on a bounce back that isn't going to happen, and it's that season that we're hoping he bounces back to was already 2-3 seasons ago. Like it's already outdated.
No, I understand what you're saying. I mean, he's had one season over 130 targets in his career. His only top 15 finishes, he had double-digit touchdowns. I don't see that happening. The only thing I'd add is I think there's decent potential come draft time that George Pickens gets traded. So maybe holding DK till then, right? If
you really want to maximize his value.
Yes, see the hope, because I don't think there's any reason between now and the end of the draft that DK's value is going to tank. I really don't see them paying up a first round pick for a wide receiver and anything, unless that happens, I think his value is going to stay the same or go higher with the George Pickens trade. That would be my only thing. I'm not selling him cheap is my thing on DK, because I do think there's talent. I think with Aaron Rodgers, he could be a double-digit touchdown kind of guy. I think he's significantly better than George Pickens. So that's the only thing I'll say. But yeah, I really don't hate moving off of it because it could just be a real mess over there in Pittsburgh this year from a passing standpoint.
I'm willing to give a little sprinkle on top of DK Metcalf to go get DJ Moore. It's another name that I'll throw out there.
Okay. Well, now you've got me. All right, you win.
I was going to say, I bet I could throw out that name and you'll be in agreement with me.
All right. You win.
Jeez, all right. Wow.
All right.
What about you, Ty? Are you okay selling DK, or is he a hold for you?
I think I'm selling him at the right price, which I'm not saying that you weren't selling guys at the wrong price before, but I'm 1 foot in Cam's boat and I'm 1 foot in your boat as well. Just like I'm not selling him cheap just because I think the opportunity can be really good for him. Right. But I'm also on the other side of the fence of just like, this is an Arthur Smith offense that will want to run the ball. And we still don't know the quarterback. If it's Shedeur Sanders, I'm not sure how I feel about that, honestly.
I didn't bring up Shedeur Sanders as an option. I mean, he's probably better than both Jackson Dart and Tyler Shuck, but I just assume Shedeur is probably going to end up being a top 15 pick, whether we want it or not.
Or Pittsburgh is holding out on the Kirk Cousins sweepstakes and bringing him in.
Here go James. Hey,
Him or Aaron Rodgers? Is one better than the other in your mind? A part of me, I don't want to say I prefer Kirk, but like I don't know if I'm like neither excite me. I guess is my point.
I'm just surprised that Mike Tomlin wanted to stay in this job with how this offseason plan has been going for Pittsburgh on offense. But yeah, I think, like I said, I'm one-footing Cam's boat of just like not selling cheap, but I see the reason why to sell. And I'm also in your camp as well. Just like there's a lot of unknowns. There's a lot that can go wrong here. Yeah, probably capitalize on value while you can.
You can go ahead and capitalize on all these guys' values. And if you even have more Dynasty trade questions as well, why don't you let us know down below in the comments, get some feedback from the community, because a lot of you have been dropping trade requests on previous videos. And we love it when we get to see you all interact and engage with one another with recent trades that you made in comparison, or even your just own opinions as well. So leave a comment down below. And if you're going to do that, you may as well hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell as well. Because again, at 3K subs, we're going to go ahead and give away $100 of my money in the form of a Visa gift card. So hit that subscribe button, turn on the notification bell as well, so you know when all of our newest content is out. Appreciate you all hanging out with us, talking Dynasty, talking fantasy football, redraft, best ball, everything of the sorts. You can hit us on the socials as well. I am at Lucas Wenzel on X, Camlaw, FFF for Cameron, Tyler _Plath for Ty. The fellas accounts, FF Fellas on Twitter. The FF Fellas on Instagram, Fantasy Football Fellas on Facebook, and the good old TikTok. What do we have coming up next week? Look at that. We got more trades, except we're going to make it really specific next week. We're not just doing buys and sells. We're going to go ahead and talk about players to acquire for both competing teams and rebuilding teams. So we're really going to narrow in the scope on these Dynasty assets you should be trading for next week. So that'll be really fun. That's an even more reason to hit that subscribe button. Sorry, I'm like going overkill on that. Thanks for tuning in, y'all. We'll be back next week. Have a great weekend. We'll see you next week. Deuces.
Deuces.